I took it to the wrong door. Took it to the wrong door again. You shared your shame. You shared your story with the wrong person. You took it to the wrong door. You took it to the wrong door instead of the right door. This video is for those who have overshared your story in the past. You brought it to the wrong door, the wrong person. Maybe you shared it with someone who it just didn't land. They didn't receive it in the way you wanted, really. I remember when I used to take my shame story to the wrong door, and it would not land with the person who I shared it with. And when it didn't land, I would want to jump off of a bridge. Seriously. And if you've been there, if you've shared your shame story with the wrong person. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to take your story to the right door, what the right door looks like, to become empowered, to fall back in love with yourself, and to rise up from the ashes of your formative despair, like the phoenix that you are born to be, that you are. It is important for you to share your story with the right person, to bring it to the right door. It is part of your transformation. Before we dive into what the wrong door may be like, let's go into a little bit of why you may be bringing things to the wrong door. My dear, if you went through childhood trauma, I'm with you. I'm on your team here. That was part of my journey. In my past life, in this physical life on this planet, I went through that. And I often would take things to the wrong door. What happens when you go through childhood trauma is you have an unmet need from your parents. They didn't meet it. They weren't able to. And when I say childhood trauma, I'm being very broad. This can even be people who maybe they're dismissive avoidant attachment style, and a lot of dismissive avoidance, for example, they don't know that they went through a form of trauma, which was in the form of suppression of emotions in their household. Their emotions were not okay. They learned to suppress them. It was neglected, and now they're in denial that they have feelings and emotions. Like, it's hardwired in their nervous system, and they have to heal this. I'm also talking about maybe you grew up in a home where you had something that really deeply affected you, and when you took it to your parent, they said, get over it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. You think that's bad? You should have had my childhood. Your parent may have one-upped you. Invalidation of whatever you're feeling. They're just jealous of you, which, okay, maybe they were jealous, but you also needed your parent to co-regulate with you. There was an unmet need in your childhood of actual presence, of the foundations of teaching you that your suffering was valid, basically. Your suffering was valid. And so what happens is that you have this conditioning where you bring things to the wrong door. Maybe you attract narcissists, or even psychopaths, or even just people who they're not a psychopath or a narcissist, but they're the kind of person, I used to attract these kind of friends, that they would just be like, just get over it. Get over it. Like one of the girls I grew up with, I spent a lot of days at her house as friends, and she would say, get over it. And I realized that it was not okay to share this with people. What may happen when you're bringing things to the wrong door is you're bringing things to other people who maybe went through childhood trauma as well, because like can attract like often until you start to heal and become more secure, for example. And there will be this time that will happen quite early on with insecure attachment style people. They come together, and very quickly off the bat, often they will trauma dump, as some people may call it. They will overshare all of the things that they went through. I used to do this, and when I was in 12-step groups early in my journey, and I would date people in the program or something, right? Everybody knew each other's dirty laundry. Here I am. It sounds ironic. I'm airing it out online, but hey, I've been healing for 13 years. I'm in a path of service now. This is the thing with childhood trauma survivors, is that we're attracted, when we're still unhealed, we're attracted to people who've also gone through trauma because we think that they will really understand our story. Because we think, maybe, now you share with me in the comments below if this resonates with you. It may not with everyone, but I will say in my journey, I felt like the people who were securely attached, like I wasn't attracted to them. They would never understand my pain because they didn't go through it. And I was only attracted to people who also went through like terrible situations in childhood. And I remember it was like this intoxicating thing. Like my wounds were really seen. And I really, truly believed for years, not just mentally, like I emotionally had this hardwired feeling, belief or whatever, that only those who went through some kind of trauma that I judged as being like bad enough that they would understand me. This was a way of thinking that I had to heal enough to break out of, that I needed someone to be as oppressed or whatever to really understand me. And it's just not true. In fact, what's happening often is that people who went through childhood trauma, they end up very attracted to each other because like goes with like, or opposites attract, if you want to say avoidant and anxious, let's say, or maybe someone who's an empath, you attract psychopaths or narcissists. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be this wound, this unmet need, that these people, you want them to give this to you. You want them to, but they're not going to, unless they're actively healing. Anyway, you will be like craving even a breadcrumb from them of attention with this unmet need. You will crave it. You will lap it up off the floor, and you will hate yourself for this desperation. It's a terrible feeling, isn't it? To take things to the wrong door. And with these type of people, it's like you're energetically drawn to each other. It's like a karmic bond is happening because you are going to have this wound. It's going to come up, it's going to come out, and it's never going to be met. But what is going to happen is it's going to keep knocking and knocking at us to see it, because we need to meet it in ourselves first. And I can promise you that if you keep outsourcing those needs, you will never be truly satiated, because it is something you need to meet first for yourself, really knowing a healthy way to meet them. And part of that healthy way can be with someone who truly cares and wants to meet it. But it's important to have ways to meet it if that person is not there, and have a way to meet it yourself as best as you can. Maybe that need is validation of what you went through. Maybe that need is presence, someone to actually be there witnessing you go through the story. And I will go through some tools towards the end of this video of how you can also start doing this for yourself. We can have all different needs and unique ones to each our own. But when it comes to a shame story, it usually is about needing presence, needing somebody who will validate and see us go through the process of the shame, go through the emotions. For example, with that aside, the greatest casualty perhaps of telling your story to the wrong person is not only if it will not land and you suffer the blow to the ego of that, but if you tell it to a narcissist or a psychopath, they may actually use it against you. And you know, if you've been there, okay, that they will actually use your vulnerabilities against you. They may not do it immediately, but one day they will lash out and they will use it against you. And tell me all your secrets so I can use them against you. That's what narcissists do. And psychopaths, they know your needs before you know them. They know them and they use it against you. That is, unless, of course, you know your needs and are meeting them in healthy ways. That's why, as you actually tend to your needs, as you tend to them, you stop attracting narcissists and psychopaths. These folks manipulated since a young age. They were manipulating everyone around them that they could to get their needs met. And so maybe you stay as shut as possible because this now programs you even deeper to not express yourself, to not go and be vulnerable, which is a terrible casualty because vulnerability really is the touchstone of growth when we're in right relationship, a reciprocal loving relationship where someone is growing with us. Because when we take our story to the right door, it actually does service. In right relationship, it will be received. And so back to this belief where only someone who had been through these terrible situations in childhood could possibly understand or empathize with me. I want to say, if that's a phenomenon for you, it is so false. It is so false because the day that you finally take things to the right door of someone who has either been through the healing or maybe they didn't go through that because, hey, let me tell you, playing Oppression Olympics, it actually does not serve us at all. I played it a lot. I've retired. But when we actually take things to the right door, sometimes that right door is not necessarily a person who went through some really big bad trauma, but they're actually a great space holder and they're actually really empathetic. And your wounds can be seen in a very different light by someone who has not gone through that, but will hold space for you in a way that is actually not possible sometimes with people who've gone through the trauma and have not done the work yet, or are not up to a certain capacity. They haven't evolved their capacity, expanded it. Also, you may be worried about trauma dumping, as it's called, so you try to bottle it up. You bottle it up because you're afraid of being a burden too. You think you're a burden, and this is one of the running core negative beliefs of a lot of people with insecure attachment styles and if you're codependent. But let me tell you, when you take things to the right door, and I will tell you what the right door's like, don't worry. When you take it to the right door, you will not feel that you're a burden. It will be like one of the days of enlightenment in your life. It will. We are afraid of being judged. Yes, this is the wrong door. When someone is harshly judging you, you're taking it to the wrong door. And it is a risk. It is a risk to bring your story. You may bring your story. Let me tell you, I brought my story to many wrong doors before I found the right doors. It was an act of growth. It was an act of risking. We do run a risk when we open up to being vulnerable. But that is, once again, the only way that we can actually evolve and be in a right relationship. Because a true right relationship, like a conscious relationship, it's all about being vulnerable. Because everybody is on this path of healing. Even conscious relationships with secure partners, it's not all roses, it's not perfection. There's no perfection. They're still coming together and sharing their vulnerabilities, and it's the right door, but they're sharing them and evolving in communion together. Here's something that may be difficult to accept also, is that we place expectations on people. Yes, we do. And sometimes we don't even think we had an expectation till after, when we realize, oh my gosh, I feel totally resentful. Yeah, and resentment is it's a very common and big emotion for people who are healing from childhood trauma. And you have every right to feel this way. We may be placing expectations that someone should show up for us. And this is just it's not going to happen with everyone, right? And not everyone has that capacity. It is only human that we end up having expectations. And the path of Buddhism really is to keep letting go of expectations we have. They are a root of unhappiness, that's for sure. But hey, you are human if you have these expectations and you didn't know you had them. How you find out you have expectations is when you feel resentment. And also this thing with capacity is like, we can't expect other people to have this capacity. People in the path of service, right? Monks, nuns, maybe your priest, priestess, whoever is like, they're on this path to listen, your therapist, your coach, right? Or maybe you have you know someone you can think of that actually has this capacity. They probably have this practice that they're building this capacity to be able to listen and sit with someone and the most uncomfortable story maybe. Not everyone deserves to know your story. These are the words of Brené Brown, a vulnerability researcher. Perhaps you've heard of her. She's amazing. And I am going to share what she says in this golden video where she outlines who the people are that you do not deserve to hear your story. So let's get into it. The first one is the friend who hears your story and feels shame for you. Yes, she feels horrified. There's this awkward silence, maybe. And then you have to make her feel better. The next one is the friend who replies to your story with sympathy, like, I feel so bad for you. And I feel sorry, instead of empathy, like, I get it, I feel for you. I've been there before in my own way. Not like, doesn't go into like this whole like, oh yeah, when I did that, blah, blah, blah. Just like, I've been there. I really feel you right now. Sharing this feeling with you. She says in this interview, let's read this out. If you want to see a shame cyclone turn deadly, throw one of these at it. Oh, you poor thing. Or the incredibly passive-aggressive Southern version of sympathy, bless your heart. The next one is the friend who needs you to be the pillar of worthiness and authenticity, as Brené Brown calls it. And she can't help because she's too disappointed in your imperfections, like you've let her down. This is what comes to mind also is like when people put all of their projections onto a couple. Like you've seen this happens to famous people all the time. Now the couple broke up and everyone's like, oh my God. And they're so disappointed that these people that they don't even actually know have let them down, and their illusion and fantasy of projections. So try not to take that one on either. Remember that is the wrong door. The next wrong door is a friend who is uncomfortable with your vulnerability and actually starts to blame you. Like, I can't believe that you would do that. I can't believe you let that be done to you. Where is that guy? I'll go kick his ass. Like this kind of thing. This kind of thing, it doesn't help. And maybe you had a parent who used to shame you. Right? It can further, like, now your subconscious mind is further ingrained with this blame cycle, right? And you may be doing this blame cycle internally as well. And I'm going to talk about this in the section on the drama triangle soon. This is an interesting one. It's the friend who has to make it all better. This is a rescuer pattern right here, because when we are going into the rescuer role, we're uncomfortable with someone else's suffering. We don't want to see them in discomfort. We want to make it better. And you know what this does? This robs someone of their growth. And it's robbing them of actually like going into the trauma, the wound, and having space held for that wound, like supported, because you're just robbing the emotion. You're trying to put a Band-Aid on it. Brené says, they actually refuse to acknowledge that you can be crazy and make terrible choices. You're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. You rock. You're perfect. Everyone loves you. And you know what? I'm sure you've been there. We've all been there where you're like, I do not rock right now. No, that didn't land, right? Doing this false encouragement is not actually serving. Right? So that's the wrong door as well. Next wrong door is one that I sort of hinted at earlier, is the friend who confuses connection with opportunity to one-up you. I have a friend, a very close friend of mine, who does this, and I pointed it out. I was like, I would appreciate it when I tell you something that was a vulnerable experience that you didn't just basically rob me of my sharing and go into when that happened to you. I know I'd love to hold space for you at some point about that story of yours, but when you do that, it doesn't actually hold space for me. It just like diverts my whole story and my whole share, and it feels really awful. It feels like, like you're one-upping me. And look, this friend of mine, they're not a narcissist. Narcissists will do that to you. Narcissistic parents will do it all the time. One of my parents is a narcissist, and don't bother telling them. You have to tell them in a certain way, I've learned over time. But they're always the bigger victim. Okay? And when someone is a victim the victim role, they may do this. That's nothing. That happened to me before. Oh, you'll get over it in a week. You've been there, it sucks, right? The platonic love of my life. This friend, he used to say to me early on when I shared my story, he said, one person's hurt does not invalidate another person's hurt. And I realized that I was doing this. I was doing this all my life. Like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. In fact, when a cop arrested an abusive partner of mine when I was 22, he told me, why don't you go over that mirror and take a good look at yourself? And I looked in that mirror. I could barely see myself really in those days because I lived in a state of dissociation all the time. I looked at myself and I saw the bruises. There were bruises on my legs and arms. There were bruises on my face. And I looked at myself and I thought, that's not so bad. That hurts, doesn't it? It hurts to think that was what I used to tell myself. So there's a difference, and you're going to hear me say it on this channel, of like, I play a little bit of hardball with myself and a little bit of softball. And what this means is like, this is hard to iterate. I'll have to make a whole video on this, but this means like, it's about, hardball is about taking responsibility for my choices. Softball is about nurturing myself. It's about holding space for myself, about taking things to the right door, about still doing self-care, regardless of how much I've effed up. Because we think that we need to keep berating ourselves and then it won't happen again. We'll learn better this time, and that is not the way. That doesn't work. You tried that way, didn't you? You know it doesn't work. You effed up, go take a bubble bath anyway. And report back to me, my friend. Report back to me. Brene also goes on to say that, like, of course, we can all be friends like this. And this is where our growth happens, of acknowledging, like, oh my gosh, these are communication blockers, actually. And that we're imperfect. That it's easy to get up into our own shame grill, as she calls it. This is part of our cultivation of conscious relationships. So listen, I'm not here just for romantic relationships. I'm here for friendship. Yeah. Because you can actually heal your attachment style more and more through friendship as well. Because let me tell you, if you're attracting narcissists in your romantic relationships, you probably have some that are your friends too. Let's read words of wisdom from Brene Brown again. She says it's hard to practice compassion when we're struggling with our authenticity or when our own worthiness is off balance. When we're looking for compassion, we need someone who is deeply rooted, is able to bend, and most of all, embraces us for our strengths and struggles. We need to honor our struggle by sharing with someone who has earned the right to hear it. When we're looking for compassion, it's about connecting with the right person at the right time about the right issue. And she even goes on to say we need a move a body friend. This is fun. A year or two ago, my good friend called, and as soon as I said hello, she said, "You're a friend who would move a body." I could tell by her voice that she was serious. I lowered my voice and whispered, "What does that mean?" She said that one of her sister's close friends had called her sister and asked her to help her move her mom. The friend's mother, who was apparently only invited to visit once a year, struggled with alcoholism. When my friend's sister's friend came home from work, her mother was passed out drunk on the sofa. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the kids would be busting through the front door any minute. She called because she physically needed help moving her mother. I let out a deep sigh and said, "Yes, you could definitely call me." Then she said one of the kindest things that anyone has ever said to me. She explained, "I'd call you because you would come right away, give me a hug, never look judgmental or disapproving or disgusted. And then you'd say, 'Let's do this.' The next day when you saw my mom at the park or the soccer game, you'd be kind and respectful. And most of all, it would never cross my mind to say something to you like, 'Please don't tell anyone.' You don't do that." I thought about that conversation for days. I thought about how lucky I am to have a couple of move-body friends in my life. I thought about how crazy it is that most of us can steamroll over these friends while we work to win approval and acceptance of people who really don't matter in our lives. People whom we never call when we were in a real struggle, when we're in a shame storm. About a week after this call, I thought I'd pay the kindness forward, and I called my friend Dawn. As soon as she answered, I said, "You're a friend who would help me move a body." She replied, "Holy crap, did you kill somebody?" I laughed. "No, not today." Then I told her how much she means to me and how grateful I am to find shelter in her friendship. Now, before I go on to this next point, where I'm going to talk about the drama triangle, I do want to say that I had a little challenge in this video in deciding if I want to keep in this part that Brene Brown gives as an example of a move-a-body friend or not. And it's really an interesting thing here, because what I'm about to say is I'm going to talk about this rescuer role that can end up being played when someone is trying to hold space for someone, but they actually just interfere with it. Because what you see in this example of Brene Brown is a little bit of rescuing, let's face it. And it is one of the things that some of us who grew up in maybe a home of addiction or alcoholism, we had to deal with it. We got used to sweeping stuff under the rug so that we could maybe not be seen by the neighbors. We got used to picking up all of the alcohol bottles maybe outside of the house so that the neighbors didn't know, so that we could at least have a normal semblance of a life. Maybe you relate. Maybe there's other things that, I could go ad infinitum of examples here of things that maybe you went through in your childhood. Maybe you were responsible for the siblings that were younger than you and making them have a better life, hopefully. And so you took on a rescuer role. And so Brene is giving this example of a little bit of a rescuer role combined though with someone who is non-judgmental and compassionate, that the next day when she sees her friend at the park, her friend knows that she's not even going to think anything of it. She's never going to judge that. So, I thought, should I leave this example out? But it goes in conjunction with her advice, and I find it to be of value. But I also am going to go into how we can get into sticky situations if we take on this rescuer role maybe too much, or maybe you've taken it on and you have to choose what your boundaries are. You get to choose your boundaries. But what I will say is that in my lifetime, I have noticed that there are some of us who attract these crazy situations often. And it is a job for us to have a boundary around that and to not feel bad about that boundary. Maybe to have certain boundaries of when you're going to do this or not. It's not a black and white choice either. Okay? It's not a black and white choice either, but it is your choice. It's your choice. And your boundaries are different from the next person's. Now let's go further into the right door. The right door will not pity you once again. They will not blame you. They will not be going into what is known as the drama triangle. And hey, we all play these roles till we actively work on getting ourselves unhooked from these roles, where we commit to no longer participating in them. And this is a lifelong endeavor, my friends. In the drama triangle, you may go into the victim role, you may go into the rescuer role, or you may go into the persecutor role. Oftentimes, narcissists go directly to the persecutor role. They blame someone. Or they may act like they're holding space and use it against you later and persecute you for it. Or maybe, like we said earlier in those other examples, someone may be like, I can't believe you let that happen to you. Or the rescuer role, I identified it a little bit in some forms earlier, where it's something like someone saying they try to make it all better. And this is what a lot of empaths do, a lot of codependent people do this, because they're trying to gain approval. They're uncomfortable. You're stuck in this rescuer pattern. This will make you sick. It literally can make you physically sick and emotionally sick if you do this. And it's uncomfortable to come out of it. I know, it's uncomfortable too. And sometimes what we tend to forget or we don't know about is that holding space, it does not always involve even speaking. You can hold space and ground yourself, bubble yourself and center yourself to hold space for a person and just listen. Listen. Have you ever actually listened, right? And you didn't know what to say, but you just listened. And the person talked maybe, and they talked and talked and talked for like a good while. And then at the end, they said, gosh, you're a great listener. Thank you. And you were like, dang, okay, that's how it works. It's how it works sometimes. You may be able to ask questions, the right questions. That's also a practice. So the drama triangle, you can also go into this role that I talked about on other videos of being a responsible victim. Yeah, what is this role? It's basically what happens when someone is playing the rescuer role a lot and they're conditioned to not have maybe, let's say, time boundaries, and people go to them for everything, and maybe they feel like, well, like, I'm an empath, like I'm here to help people, I'm enlightened because I know and this is almost a grandiose thing that can happen, and I rubbed people the wrong way in a different video about this, but so be it. Look, I've been there. Okay, I'm talking about things that I'm aware of, that and I'm not the only one aware of these, okay? Is that you may think, oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. And this is something that I had to shatter through when I entered my priestess path, okay? It was an ego thing. And I had to shatter through it to come more and more into the path of service of just being the priestess, of just being the space where people can bring their shame story to. And it lands. It lands in the space, it's received, but I don't need to take it on. And I don't mean that coldly. I mean, I don't need to be a responsible victim. Hey, I also get to have time boundaries where I get to say, like, thank you so much for sharing all this with me. We've got about 5 minutes left on the call. Or, hey, I'm at a burn now. That means I haven't slept all night. People keep coming up to me with what happened to them last night. This happens to me at a lot of burns. Is that a lot of people start sharing their shame stories. And a burn a couple years ago, this is where I was still in this, like, oh my God, like, I'm this person who can hold space for people's stories, and I'm worthy of that. Do you follow me? I'm putting my shadows out here. And this happens to everyone on the spiritual path. It's called the spiritual ego. Yes, if you're not doing your shadow work, you're going to not see your spiritual ego come up. I have zero shame in talking about this. It is essential for our growth. It came down on me where I learned that actually I was not even able to hold space in that time. That also I was in this responsible victim pattern of, like, I actually wanted to go back to my camp and go nourish myself because I'd been up all night. I had expended a lot of my energy. I needed to get back to my meditation practice and eat a good meal and all of this and sleep. And there I was trying again to to listen to people because it would make me important. Do you follow? You know if you know. This is an old codependency pattern. Get out of it. Okay? Get out of it. Come along. Don't be ashamed. We go through it and we can transcend it. In the responsible victim, you may also be like, oh my God, like feeling obligated, like I have to like be there for this person because like they're going through this again. And you're neglecting your needs. You can't hold space if you're neglecting your needs. So I want to share with you an example of someone who held space for me early in my journey. Was my best friend, Jordan. We had met as teachers in one of my first schools. I was 23 years old and we started hanging out. One day we were in my apartment. He was on the couch. I was painting and I was sharing with him a story of what had happened to me, of the abusive relationship that I left, of the couple that I was dating, because I was playing out roles that they were like my parents and I was trying to fix this couple. Yes, this happens. Welcome to being a unicorn and codependent and insecurely attached. Yes, if you know if you know. I was telling him all these things and he was just asking questions like, why would you date them if blah, 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 blah? And I was like getting more to the matter. And he was doing this in a way that was not, it wasn't blaming, it wasn't judgmental. He was just asking questions. He was genuinely curious, like present and curious in a way that I had never really experienced before. This can go very wrong. You can ask too many questions and actually rob the space, or you can hold space, you can listen, you can ask curious questions, and the way he did it was just, it was very loving. Until this day, we have a joke where I call him my priest. He is energetically my priest. I can bring any damn shame story to this man, and he will hold me in positive regard, as it's called, positive regard. And so after I told him this whole story, I mean, we had only been friends for like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. I wanted to jump off a bridge. I was so mortified. I was like, oh my God, I've overshared this. And I've overshared this with someone that I work with. And you know what happened? The next day, he called me up and asked me, hey, you want to go do A, B, and C thing out in the city? And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, he wanted to keep being my friend. This was a huge revelation to me that this kind of person existed in the world. And we've been friends till this day. It was a right door to take it to. Sometimes I took it to the right door in 12-step programs, which is where I learned this phrase. Did you take it to the right door? Or a sponsor would say, you took it to the wrong door. So, and I learned, unfortunately, I learned the hard way, right? But sometimes that is how we learn. Sometimes. It doesn't have to be all the time, okay? Now we're getting to this point of the video where it's me telling you some ways to take it to the right door. How do you take it to the right door? First and foremost, you take your shame story to your higher power, your higher self. You can be there even with your inner child, who's the one that's going to be going through this wound as well. But you take it to your higher power, your higher self. Take it to the creator. That is different for everyone. Spirituality is bio-individual. What one person is connected to may not be the same for someone else. Do not compare yourself to others. You have a unique connection to the divine, but you take it there first. You pray over it. You journal over it. I know it's like journal. It works. Journaling helps. There's another thing that I do, and I used to do this. It's beautiful. I saved all these letters to myself. I still am back in the practice. I'm back in the practice of doing it now, where I would get really nice stationery for this too, like fun stuff. Treat yourself, babe. Treat yourself. Get some cute stationery, get some nice stickers, and write a letter to yourself on your worst day ever. Yeah. And you write this letter, it's like, write it as though it's your higher self saying it to you, or a more evolved self. And that self is always going to come from a place of compassion. Like, I know this sucks. I know this hurts. I'm here with you. You know, you can write it back and forth. You'll find your way. But seriously, letters to yourself, they are one of the best things. And so you share this first with yourself. Take it to nature. Seriously, nature is, for me, this is the immediate access to the goddess, immediate access to elevating my vibration. If my vibration's thrown off, I go right into nature. You can ask even a tree. I'm serious. Like, hey, if you go to the redwoods, some people may think I'm crazy. You stand before a redwood and you tell me that it's not talking to you. Some people are just so disconnected that they can't connect, and that sucks. But I ask trees for consent. Seriously, energetic consent. Not all trees want to be hugged, but there's trees that I make friends with, that I talk to and I consult things with. This is the first and foremost. Then once I have done all of this, as much self-validation as possible. Self-validation, I take it to the next right door. Maybe this is a therapist, this is a coach, this is a friend that you've established this with, who's worthy of your story, who is trustworthy. Okay? And if you're you're like, I don't know who I can trust, you may want to check out like a spiritual community where people are really doing the work. So, this could be hit or miss too. And a lot of spiritual communities, let me tell you, like maybe you've had this before, there can be a dark side to them. There's always the light and the shadow. Okay? But you'll find your way. You'll find your way. And so you take it to the right door. And the reason why I'm listing this also first is back to this self-validation thing. Self-validation. Don't just coddle yourself first. Don't go directly into giving your power away and going directly to having someone else validate you. It can be a pattern. First, take it to yourself first, yourselves. And also, it's like, if you can't afford the therapist, maybe, or the coach, you don't know the community, or you're scared to yet, maybe you find someone online. I really recommend Tara Brach. I love her work. She's one of my favorite Buddhist practitioners and teachers. And her RAIN, RAIN, which is part of Radical Acceptance. This is a type of meditation that is incredible. I sincerely recommend practicing that. She's got tons of videos on it online, so check them out. And remember, this is a hard acceptance here, that it's only ever the wrong door when we have not accepted this part of ourselves. It's only ever the wrong door when we have not accepted this part of ourselves. Let me explain this. There's Diagnosed Narcissist commenting on the channel now. And the same videos that are getting the most people coming to the door who need this assistance. And there's a lot of likes on the videos. When these folks are commenting below, and maybe I'll see a comment, it's really, some of them have been quite mean, we'll say, right? And maybe it will hurt. I get this opportunity to receive this, and I get to, instead of pushing that away, I get to bring it to the right door within myself. This is trippy, ain't it? I get to open up more to my connection with my higher power, because I could either go into people-pleasing mode where I comment back, or I get in the mud with them even, or I start to doubt, am I actually serving the world? Am I actually on the path of devotion? Am I actually here? Am I actually doing the right thing? I could do that, and I can go into self-doubt, right? I could ruminate on this. I could get more and more into victim consciousness. Or I can see that there's parts of me that are still, they're about to go into this victim pattern. They're going into it maybe. I can hold space for them. I can feel the feelings that are coming up. And I can also say, there's this one person online, I forget her name, but she's like, you know what I call haters? My motivators. Everyone goes, I said, oh, I'm getting some getting some stuff, some mean comments here. They're like, you must be doing something right. I don't know, you could be doing something wrong, but this is about self-validation. This is about putting this Dharma into the world. And sometimes what happens to a lot of empaths and a lot of recovering codependents, you know, is that they're afraid that they're becoming narcissistic. They're afraid they are becoming selfish, that they're hurting people. And I'll leave it there because I could go very far into that one. Now I want to go into something else that's very important. When you're bringing things to the right door, it's important to also honor other people's boundaries. Develop this discernment where you are like seeing like how much capacity someone has. You may not know this either. You may not know, and you may really have to outright ask the right person. Hey, I'm going through something's on my mind, like, and I need someone to hold space for me. Like, are you available today? You can outright say that to someone. Or like, I'm going through something, do you have the capacity today? The capacity, because even the people who are so good at this, they may be not able to do it today, now, right? And we want to be sensitive to that. But you don't be scared to ask this, right? Don't be scared of this. You may be scared because you're afraid of overwhelming someone, of burdening someone. You were trained that you thought you were a burden, right? As a child, you're not important. And so it can be good to just outright ask someone something like, is it okay for me to say these things to you, or to share something that I'm going through right now? Is it a burden? You can outright even ask that to the right person. And if they're not playing a responsible victim role where they're feeling obligated, they will be like, oh, well, can we talk later? Or, you know, you want to go to someone who has good boundaries technically. Like, actually ask for consent. Ask for consent from someone. Are they okay with that? Are they welcoming to it? You may be surprised. You may have some beautiful experiences happen. Happened to me so many times now. 2 years ago, my grandma passed, and she raised me and my siblings. And the sibling that I'm very close to, they are not as emotional. That's how their reaction was to the upbringing. And I never really saw them cry. They also never cried when our mom died. And I took on this thing also where no one was there in my suffering when my mom died when I was 14. And I had to go in my room and cry. Like, I was outwardly told by my grandmother, like, please don't cry. If you cry anymore, it's going to make me cry. Like, okay. She was completely stoic, and she never cried at all. And neither did my brother. And so when grandma died, I said, you know, I was really going through this. It really, really hit me. And I thought, like, I'm not going to judge him over this because I know he loved her. But what I realized that I really needed was I wanted him to hold space for my suffering. And I could not contain it anymore when I was visiting him. And I just broke down and said, is it okay for me to share all this with you? And he was like, yes, yes. And he shared also his side. And it was so healing. He was really the person that I needed. And it took like this huge weight off. But you know, sometimes we're not granted that. Maybe we want that from a person will not meet that need. You know, and that's really about where we become discerning of who is the right and the wrong door. The problem that happens is that a lot of codependents, part of the recovery really around this is to receive someone's boundary as well. Is that we have a lot of expectations on people. And we can develop having this emotion of resentment that others should be there for us, or they're insensitive. And we need to practice the steps like I said in this video. I know it hurts. It's part of this healing. I'd love to see some of the beautiful comments below. Thank you for being here and for being on this path with me, that I may show up continuously as a path of service in the world. If you like this video, if it was of service to you, give it a thumbs up. It does help the channel, and it helps those who need it find it. And if you want to stay connected, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.